Well, haven't we been blessed today with some amazing and very different content and presentations? We're very grateful to each of our speakers. Thank you very much. Would you give them another round of applause? Once again, we're going to have the opportunity to ask some questions, and there'll be a microphone kind of circulating if you'd like to make yourself known if you have any questions, and this microphone for our guests. Just while we're warming up, I'd like to, there's a question over here, but let me just pose a question firstly to Shirley Ann, if I can. We often hear the statement that we're all in the same boat. Well, we're not all in the same boat, but we are in the same storm. Some of us have yachts, some have canoes, and some are drowning. Let's just be kind and help whoever we can. The question is, the vulnerable communities group that you've been working with, in what ways could these faith communities and the people expressed here support those that are most vulnerable in the community and that may be in the same storm but not experience being in the same boat?
What a great question. That's fantastic. Just on an aside, I did, a lot of people that are part of community groups are volunteers, and I do love the boat quote about the importance of volunteers, because Noah's Ark was built by volunteers and the Titanic was built by professionals. So just putting that out there, a bit of humour there. Which is part of resilience, I've learnt from you. The Vulnerable Communities Group is a group that is actually open to anyone. So if people are interested in joining that, they can come along. We have the Red Cross who are on there. A number of religious groups are on there. We have Civic Assist. We have many church groups. So what people do is they come along, and when we talk, it's either talking about how we can help someone. It's normally always the people that everyone else knows, because even though we're a community of over 150,000 people, our vulnerable community members are the same. And so the people that you know that are vulnerable will be the people, a lot of them that I would know are vulnerable. And if you want to come along, you come online and we share ideas. So everyone goes through and says things like, hey, I've got this family, they don't name the family, that's needing food. Now we've had Hanif from Pure Land Learning say, hey, well, I can offer toys to the children, and I can offer face masks. Like, it's about the same people, but it's open to anyone in the community that wants to give back. And we meet fortnightly, and it's on Teams, so you just need technology to come on in. And I know that doesn't really answer it, but all I can say is, yes, we're all on different boats, but the journey we're going on is to the same place. We want to get back to normality, and we're all heading in that direction, but we need everyone on those boats to be tugging along in the same way. And I think the Vulnerable Communities Group helps Toowoomba's community by making sure that those that can't swim are given the tools to be able to get on the boat or swim beside it, but so that nobody drowns. And if you drown, we're there to help you, pull you out and give you a decent farewell, I suppose. Not that I want anyone to die, but...
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have some questions. Over here.
So you almost stole my question, Terry. It was for Shirley Ann Gardner about the Vulnerable Communities Group. And I was still not clear about the point of contact for this group and how the initiative can be supported. So it's really almost the same question, but a little bit more information, please.
Sure. So I set up the group. I'll give a bit more background maybe. So in March, people were saying and calling me from different CEOs of different organisations saying, you're in health, tell me what's the real story? How many people actually have COVID? How many people are dying? And now they've moved to what's the number of people vaccinated? How do I get vaccinated? Where do I go? So this group meet fortnightly, but every day I provide a daily summary, which if you email me, and I've got my email address that's available, I'll add you to the distribution list. I send out a daily COVID update as the source of truth. It lists how many cases overnight are new, how many people are active in Australia, Australia, Queensland, Toowoomba, to make you feel more comfortable. So for example, there are only 3 active cases at the moment in all of Queensland. Now when that changes, I'll let you know. So even if it's worst case scenario and there's 100,000 active cases or 600 as there was last year in Queensland, at least you know what's true and what's not. So I can add you to a distribution list where daily you will receive an update from me at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I write it and it'll say, this is the number of cases. Then if you want to come to the Vulnerable Communities group, we have a person that comes and speaks for about 10 minutes at the start of that meeting, who's the Silver Commander, we call them, really cool name, and they are the COVID expert in the Darling Downs, a bit like Liam Flynn's come to talk, who we heard from earlier. That person will update on how many people in the region have been vaccinated, what are the things people are worried about, and what will reassure you. And then every member can then bring up any issues they've got. So if they've got people they know that are saying, I know someone who's scared of needles, who do I go to? Someone in those 40 organisations that are currently online will say, well actually, like Heather Roberts over there, she'll say, I know someone who speaks Kurdish, Kurmanji, who can help the multicultural, culturally and linguistically diverse people. So it's about helping each other. But you just need to email me. I'll add you to the distribution list. Then if you want to come online, you come online. And at the moment, for example, a lot of our church groups, it'll be one representative. They'll go back and then tell their people. The minutes of those meetings then get sent to everyone that's there, even if they don't go, that's on the distribution list. They can send them out then for the message to spread. But the whole idea is source of truth, understanding the truth and realising, although we're on different boats and different religions, different cultures, we are, like for me, I feel we're all in this together.
Thank you. Abbot Luswin, thank you for reminding us about the notion of yin and yang, which comes from Taoism, and the importance of the breath. Could you explain to us this airborne disease that we have called coronavirus has got to do with the breath and how we understand yin and yang from a Taoist perspective with this airborne disease?
气，空气和气，它都是一个气。这个气呢，为什么有疫情会传染呢？因为这个气呢，被这种叫细菌，名字叫冠状，完了所感染了。有些人被感染了，有些天地这个事物，很多人这个包括物和人都一样被感染了。所以说呢，这个我们所练的这个气呢，是内在这口气。这口气越强呢，身体越好；气越弱呢，身体越弱。所以说，我们就医学叫免疫力，免疫力越强呢，身体越强；免疫力越弱呢，身体越弱。所以说，这个练这种我们道家的功法呢，就可以排除很多那种不好的这个气。这个气有正气、邪气。我那个冠状就是一种邪气，而这种邪气呢，如果一旦进入人体，就会产生反应。所以我们每个人都需要这种精神，需要这种正气。这种气就来自于大自然，来自于内心的善良。
I'll put what Master Lo Xing said into perspective. So regards on the qi, there's a few different types of qi. So there's the qi where you inhale and exhale. There's the qi which your body operates internally. And there's also the qi where, which is like the earth atmosphere, which is another type of qi. And regarding to how coronavirus how COVID-19 spread, Master Loshing has given the description that all the diseases that have ever spread around, including this one, COVID, is just another type of qi which is has been spreading around. And by Taoists, they have developed many different methods of using nature forces, like and using nature to help recover from various diseases. If that's like an ideal explanation.
Thank you very much. What an excellent response in difficult circumstances. Another question.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to the panel and all of those wonderful presentations. I just wanted to ask, I suppose, a question that's a little bit broader in perspective. Pope Francis recently wrote a book called Let Us Dream, and in it he calls for a post-pandemic reset. He says we can't continue to go on the way we have gone on. So rather than perhaps just focusing on, you know, the initiatives that we've focused on here today, there's also a sense of an urgency about a complete reset of the paradigms that we have been relying on up until this point. So he says we need a commitment to challenging the dominant paradigm of individualism and unending economic growth. So my question is, how can institutions take part in such a reset? And by institutions, I refer to health, education, faith communities, governance, and corporate bodies.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm wondering, Colin, you talked about public health and the expansion, the way that needs to expand. And it's clear from Shirley Ann's presentation and yours that there's a really close connection in this pandemic about the acute hospital situation and people that need to be there and the primary kind of health in the community. How can the public health system perhaps help us, those that come from faith communities and other social groups, facilitate this reset? What's the role that health might play in supporting what we can do as faith communities?
Look, I actually think that's very difficult. I agree entirely with what you say. I think we do need a complete societal reset. The difficulty that Shirley Ann and I would face as part of Queensland Health is you're not allowed to deviate too far from accepted ways of thinking before you get yourself into trouble. You know, I could not suddenly go out there and start saying, tear the place down and let's start again, even if I think it's the right thing to do, because I'm part of the establishment when I'm in Queensland Health. So I actually think that we could certainly use the public health concept, that concept of it's the health for everybody rather than the health of the individual, and promote that. But I really think this is something that has to come from the grassroots. It has to come from the individuals, all of us, to say to our governments and our leaders that where we've got to in the last 60 years in terms of never-ending increase in economies and individualism has just got to stop, because it isn't doing us good in the long run. I think we're all in this together.
Terrific.
Add?
Not much more I can add, although in terms of hospitals, we are seeing that one reset that's happened is you used to think, as I've said with meetings, that you had to come and meet in person. The same with hospitals. Colin mentioned virtual emergency departments and things like that. So I think the world's the view of the world and what we can do is going to change, but it is very difficult when you're in a government organisation to be that change, and I agree some of it has to come from the community.
I think, I can't remember who it was, but you put a slide up about the social determinants of health. You know, and when we talk about health and well-being, we talk about the well-being of the whole person, which includes their physical, social, emotional and spiritual well-being. So perhaps health gives us the language to find new ways to work together through the public health system, but also in partnership with religious and faith communities that are concerned for people's spiritual well-being. And certainly the long tail of COVID in terms of mental health and suicide, that's the long tail of COVID beyond those people that suffer from long COVID, is a platform for us to do that. So we're really grateful that there's such a strong health presence here today that we can explore those opportunities with. Thank you. Some more questions?
Thanks, Terry. Thank you, Terry, and thank you to the panel for your input. I think my question goes to Colin. I was really intrigued when you spoke about the pandemic, disinformation. There's an information pandemic, disinformation pandemic, and it's baffling, really, and I thought it was nicely coined. Can I ask two things? One is, how is Queensland Health, or how can they help people really get clarity? And I think, you know, in lots of ways, the work that Shirley Ann does with that daily update is part of it. But particularly in that vaccination debate, how can we really promote clarity around that? Because the disinformation is rife and it's splitting families, splitting workplaces, splitting society. And what role can we play as faith leaders and faith representatives in disseminating that? Thank you.
Again, difficult question, because we've been struggling with that, haven't we, for the last 6 or 9 months. Certainly within health, I think we could have done far better in health promotion of vaccines. I think we got tripped up early on, by the lack of availability of vaccines, and then by these decisions, and we addressed them this morning, around AstraZeneca not being good enough for Australians. There's a lot of work in the literature now which shows that at 6 months it's probably better than the mRNA vaccines, but we didn't know that 6 or 9 months ago. And it became almost driven by society that this was a dud vaccine, not by the healthcare team, because we were still very keen to use that vaccine. So I do think that we haven't been strong enough about I guess the things that we've been talking about here today, which is the social issues around vaccination. That it isn't enough just to talk about vaccination as what protects me, but it's about protecting the whole of society. And I think, interestingly, we have a really good opportunity now with the opening up of the borders to reinforce this message, because, as I've been saying to people, you know, there is no opportunity to not get COVID. Once COVID spreads through society, everyone will get it in some form or another. Most of the vaccinated will get it in a very minor form. They won't probably pass it on, they may not even notice that they've had it, but they will be exposed to it. And it's the unvaccinated that face the greatest risk in the next few months as COVID spreads through society, because we're no longer running those public health controls that we've had in place for the last almost 2 years. So, yeah, lots more work to do, I agree with you. And I think all of us, and one of the reasons I agreed to come and talk here was because I'm passionate about getting this information out there. I think all of us need to work together to talk about the value of vaccines, not just as a protection for the individual, but for the protection of the whole of society. Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you.
I think the Queensland government and this whole state and all the statutory department that had been involved in the control of this virus must be complimented. However, we can see that there has been a lot of side effects for AstraZeneca, and which has been covered by Dr. Lin as well in his previous deliberation. I'm just wondering, is there any strategy to manage this by the department in relation to the side effects of the vaccine? And secondly, do we have to live with this virus forever?
Answer the second bit, yes. This virus will be in community from now on, in various forms. Now, some pandemics slowly burn themselves out. This is not looking like that at the moment. There's new mutations coming all the time. There's the new one from South Africa that we're concerned about that is meant to have had a significant mutation of the spike protein, and therefore is going to be even more virulent than the current Delta, which is the predominant virus across the world at the present time. So the short answer is, for the foreseeable future, we are living with this virus. First thing. Secondly, in terms of vaccine side effects, got to be careful how we look at those. As we heard this morning, probably 1 in 50,000 people having AstraZeneca may get a blood clot. Now, early on, that was very important because the mortality in the first cohort of people that got those blood clots was upwards of 50%. And that was because we treated it completely the wrong way. As you heard this morning, this is a strange disease. It's a disease where you've got no platelets left, but your blood is clotting, and platelets cause clotting. Now, the reason that happens is that the platelets clump and cause clotting, and your body doesn't make more. So you get a combined clotting and bleeding disease, which is unusual. And it's driven by an immunological process. It's not the same as other clotting. Got to make that very clear. Now that we understand how it works, the mortality is down at about 1 or 2%. So of the people that get clotting from AstraZeneca, only 1 or 2% actually die. So we're now talking about serious side effects of closer to 1 in a million, not 1 in 50,000. Does that make sense? And how we manage that is we can only do that in terms of balancing that and the risks of that, or of having an mRNA vaccine, because they have other side effects. You know, they cause, in young people, they cause a degree of inflammation of the heart, occasionally, again in the sort of 1 in 200,000, 1 in 300,000 sort of level, and those kids recover again. But we've got to balance that against, but what does it look like if you don't have the vaccine? Now, this is the key. I can't guarantee that if I give you the vaccine, you won't get some side effects. But what I could guarantee is that as a population, if we all get vaccinated, the side effects are vastly lower than if we all get COVID. Because just as an example, if we say the clotting from AstraZeneca is 1 in 50,000, the clotting for people that actually get COVID and get sick with COVID is between 15 and 30% will get clots. Okay, so again, the damage from the disease is far higher than the damage from the vaccination. So I think we have to understand that balance, and it's trying to plot our way through that, which is why the using of vaccines has become quite nuanced. You know, we've decided that we're going to give the mRNA vaccines to younger people in general, that older people can have AstraZeneca because that risk of clotting is much lower once you get over 50. And it's why you see these variations as the doctors are working, because they're trying to pick the safest balance between AstraZeneca, between an mRNA vaccine, because Moderna and Pfizer are pretty similar, and getting the disease itself. And we're going to go on having to tiptoe through that, and we'll probably find there's better vaccines in the future with lower side effect profiles. And in the end, COVID vaccines will become like getting your measles vaccine, getting your mumps vaccine, getting a chickenpox vaccine or meningitis vaccine, all of which have become just standard and accepted in society. We've got to get there yet, and we've got to keep remembering this is only, you know, all of this has happened in the last 2 years. The innovation around just the vaccine development has been enormous. Yeah. But a good point, a good question.
Other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Prayag. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, the vaccine's been around for about a year now, and people are getting the vaccines. I've talked to quite a few people now, today, and they didn't know about the vaccine and how they were made and what kind of vaccines they were and stuff. Do you think the government has done a good job in actually providing those informations to people so that people would not be against the vaccines and not be deviated by those, you know, like wrong informations? And how do we get this information to people? Because it's easy to say research and find some papers online, but has the government done anything to actually find this information to people and make it easily accessible?
It's interesting. One of the innovations that I thought was very exciting during 2020 was every day you'd have the Premier and the Chief Health Officer would stand up and talk about COVID. And the Premier would talk about what they were doing, but the Chief Health Officers were able to explain the nuances of what was going on. And they could take half an hour to do that. And so you could start to see people really able to discuss risk-benefit analysis and why this might be better for this group of people, but that would be better for that group of people. Unfortunately, we've shifted back now to the standard media cycle that looks for comments from politicians and gives them about 5 seconds to make 3 points, and that's it. So there's no longer room in the media for that nuanced debate, which is what you need to discuss these things which are scientifically based and are not black and white. They're all the shades of grey. That makes sense?
Can I just add to that? I don't know, just on a different topic slightly, to start, Ronaldo, a famous, I think he was a soccer player, and he went to a conference and right in front of him he saw a Coca-Cola can and he said, "No Coke, water," and he held it up. Immediately within a few minutes, I think Coca-Cola had lost something like $5 billion off their share price immediately, just by the power of one leader making a statement. The problem we have with social media is everything's at your fingertips and it's the wrong information often. And so a lot of young people may see some news feed and it's, if you watch a documentary called The Social Dilemma, it shows how news is tailored to you. So even if I wanted to see good news, my news is tailored. Because I go and look at COVID stats every day, my algorithm makes it look like I'm, I think, an anti-vaxxer that's paranoid about COVID, because all of mine's sort of written about, oh, how dare we have this and all of that. So it's very hard to get truth out there, even if we wanted to, because there's so many different platforms now. Like I showed with the Pokemon Go within 19 days. In a second, you can have a story spread that's not true on social media. And I think John Lennon said it best in the 1960s when he said, reality leaves a lot to the imagination, and people are making up their own beliefs. So that makes it harder for us. And I agree with Colin, when we had the Chief Health Officer with their truth, but what you have to do is find the real sources of truth and stick to those. So even though there's a lot of fear about the government, if you go to the Queensland Health website, you will at least get consistent, up-to-date information. That's my thoughts on that one.
Really good example right now of disinformation, and it involves a very important and respected group. So you may have seen in the media in the last few days talk of the police and the ADF in the Northern Territory forcibly vaccinating Aboriginal people. Now that was actually put out by Amnesty International in the UK. They actually put that out. It's completely untrue. Completely untrue. And now we've got a very respected organisation that's going to have to eat humble pie and apologise. So if an organisation like that can get it so wrong, what about everyone else?
Cam.
Just wanted to make a comment, a few comments, never one comment from Cam. Just wanted to say a big thank you to the Department of Health and what it has done for the community of Australia. Starting with Brendan Murphy shutting the borders, I think that was the best thing we could have done to save Australia, and that was the best decision that could have been made for a person in his position. And then obviously Dr. Janet Young, I saw her on TV all the time, and the way she comes across is very sincere, and she means what she's saying. And I think that helped Queenslanders as well to get through this hard time. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work and the frontline workers who've always been there to sort of support the communities, whichever backgrounds they come from. They don't distinguish, they do what they have to do. We saw what's happened in other countries like the UK. My family's there, so I can see what's happening there with the frontline workers and what they have to go through. And I think Bishop Cameron mentioned the hardship of the staff and what they have to go through when they actually see people dying that could have been avoided and all that. So I want to say a big thank you for that. But I also had a question about the cold communities. And I think somewhere along the line, they have been missed out in the sense of giving them the information to make the decision whether to go for the vaccination or whether to do something about it, or how do they actually tackle it. But before I let you answer that question, I was also going to say thank you to the staff, because you all jumped on board as soon as the help was needed, like, with the elderly retirement homes and all those places where the things were going wrong. And I was actually working with the Department of Health at the time, and I saw the resources that were being pushed in that direction. This is the federal department, where they were actually making sure that enough staff was available to be sent out to make sure that those elderly homes were being looked after. Unfortunately, news will only concentrate on the negativity of things. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. But nobody actually saw what really happened. So thank you very much for that. And now if you can answer the question about the cold communities. Thank you.
Thank you for that. One of the things I'd just like to say that came out of the Vulnerable Communities group was the realisation that our multicultural community had an even harder time understanding what was going on, not being able to see family, suffering trauma and having to isolate. It was terrible. But one of the things we did at Toowoomba Hospital is we actually put on a clinical nurse consultant, Vulnerable Communities. She's here today, Heather Roberts, shaming her out down the end there. But her role is to actually work with the culturally and linguistically diverse communities. She's worked on translation documents so that they can find things, working with Catholic Care to help translate things into Kurdish Kurmanji. And as we know, that's, some people may know, it's not often a written language, so there's videos of them speaking so they can understand what to do. We've also got Multicultural Australia on board coming to the vulnerable communities groups. But Heather works with any vulnerable person. Anyone, in my definition of vulnerable, is not just culturally and linguistically diverse. They could be older person or living alone. But Heather goes and helps those people to navigate the health system, particularly during COVID, and that's a really hard thing. And she has organised clinics specifically for the Yazidi population, for example, so they can all get vaccinated and things like that. So we actually have dedicated roles to help that particular group because we identified it as people with having an issue. So that's another positive about COVID.
Thank you.
I've also been interested in organising vaccinations in Brisbane. And it's really interesting if you look at the progress of the vaccination. So we started both testing centres and vaccination centres in the big hospitals. Difficult access, high cost parking, all sorts of issues. So we said, let's move them out of hospitals, and so we put them in parking lots and various places, and it made it easier access. And then we said, well, let's set up big vaccination centres, and so the entertainment centre in northern Brisbane was a big vaccination centre, and so was the one on South Bank for a while. But it went well for a while, and then the numbers dwindled, and we went, what now? Well, let's go and put vaccination centres in local schools. Tried that. Works really well for a while, peters off again. What about communities? Go and do that. So I guess all I'm saying is that there have been iteration on iteration on iteration of how to try and get vaccines out to those people that are not getting the mainstream message. And it's still going on. There's still more ideas about where next to put vaccination centres to try and attract people in smaller and smaller groups to come and get vaccinated. So the attempts there, can't say it's perfect, because it's clearly not, but certainly people are working really hard to try and do that.
And I'll just add to that, you may be aware that in Toowoomba, Clifford Gardens has a vaccination part of the building set up to take 1,500 vaccinations a day. And I took my husband took our 14-year-old son and 16-year-old daughter to get vaccinated, and the best thing they loved about it was they've got signs afterwards where you can write down the reasons you got vaccinated, and they're hilarious. So if you've got a good sense of humour, one of the reasons to get vaccinated is to see the humorous things that people have come up with, particularly things like mum made me do it and things like that, but truck drivers with their humour. So, but we do have a great facility at Clifford Gardens which is working, and a lot of people are going, and we're at 89% of Toowoomba residents are vaccinated with their first dose, 89%. So something's working very well for us.
And you've reminded me that on the Gold Coast, the partnership between health and private practitioners with both the Baha'i community and the Islamic communities, that we've had pop-up vaccination centres at the Baha'i Centre in the Gold Coast and 2 of the Islamic mosques on prayer days. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I love the idea of truth being you belong to the truth, and truth is a relationship. And I love the fact that you guys have come because, you know, sometimes our isolated faith communities, we're so isolated and we talk to the same people, and it's just lovely to be able to talk to other people, and you know, it just widens your perspective and everything like that. And I just thank Pure Land too, because I think they're doing a marvellous job.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. A microphone over here, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Actually, this is not a question. My name is Michael Chen from Gold Coast. I'm the chairman of the Gold Coast Chinese community, and it's a great honor to be invited to come to this event. And actually, this is my first time to be in Taiwan. We just been welcome and enthusiastic, and especially I would like to say appreciate to all the professors, doctors, and all the information we get, and it's very, very helpful. And we understand the last 2 years we've been very difficult time through the COVID-19 pandemic, but actually I think we also very lucky to have our federal government, state government, city council to cooperate together with all the society and community, and we so lucky, we safe, we passed the most difficult time, and today most code I would like to repeat that again. One of the most important things you can do on this earth is let people know they are not alone. I like this very, very much. And yesterday is a Thanksgiving Day. Okay, so I would like to sincerely to say we're very grateful and thanks very much for this event. And as a New Year approach, I hope everybody here and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, a question.
Maybe an observation. I guess I'm one of the last of the new Australians that came out in the 60s. The Australia I came to then had such, I remember one of the first comments I got, you don't need to tip because we pay decent wages. We had a policy of full employment. And I came to this place, I couldn't see rich people, they didn't stand out, and I didn't see many homeless people. And everybody was working, they weren't making a lot of money. And I remember one Italian migrant said, this job is a toot job. I won't say what he said, but I'm paying enough wages, I'm buying a little house, and I'm getting better off every day, and you know, life's pretty good here. Okay. And now, every day, in every way, we've become a more Americanized in our way. We're a richer country, but we have people now that are struggling to pay rent, people that are struggling to buy a house. And what I think is happening is people are stressing out. Now, I don't know whether you noticed in the demonstrations in Melbourne, people were waving Trump flags, and people were talking about my rights under the Constitution. I thought they're Americans. You know, I don't think they know there's a monarchy anymore. Now, what I'm saying is that one of the problems you've got is that people are so stressed out. When we're stressed out, we can't think clearly, and we feel helpless very often, and we're going to listen to any false messiah that comes along. And I think that's a real difficulty in our whole society. But I'm just giving an opinion. Sorry, it's not a question.
Thank you.
I totally agree with you, and thank you for that. I feel really privileged, though, to work for a public hospital. I've chosen to do that, not to work for private, for the very fact that I want to be able to give back to those that are the least able to afford that. And I like the fact that one of my all-time favourite quote, I didn't put it up, about the pandemic is, leadership is your ability to hide your panic from others, and that was Lao Tzu said that. And I love that, because the whole point of us being here is to give you the right message, to make you feel that we are like all in this together, but we may be panicking on the inside, but we're giving you at least the truth for you to walk away with. And yes, we can't help how others are, and I don't like the fact that people want to get richer, but what we can do is give back to our local community and spread that correct message, because kindness is contagious.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think we might have come to the end of our time together, is that right? Yep. So, oh, sorry. I'm very sorry.
Extend that a little. I think it's really important to look after your healthcare workers. I really fear that in places like the States and the UK particularly, where healthcare workers have been essentially inundated for 2 years, that currently they're staying only because they feel responsible, but as the disaster wanes, I would estimate, and you can prove me wrong in 2 or 3 years' time, I would estimate between a third and a half of all healthcare staff will leave and find other jobs that aren't as stressful. Now, it's less of a problem here in Queensland. It's a real problem in Victoria and New South Wales, I can tell you, because again, I'm in touch with the clinicians down there. It doesn't matter what the politicians tell you, they're in trouble. They're really struggling. And I guess, is that still working? Yeah, thanks, Go. I guess all I would say is we have to guard against that, and that is why, and it's worth talking about this to people, that is why we're putting the restrictions in place for the unvaccinated. Frankly, we've got to the point now, if we're at 90% vaccinated, and everybody that wants to be vaccinated is, that we can just open up and let the virus spread from an individual perspective. But again, from a societal perspective, if we overrun our health system, A, a lot more people die that don't need to, but B, you're going to burn out your health workers and you won't have them in 5 years' time.
Another question.
I may be the last. I have lived in Australia longer than I have lived in Korea, so I must have some idea about Australian society. Freedom, individualism, rights, they are the moving energy to make Australia, to me, very good community, good country. Without those factors, probably Australia could be a little bit more like Eastern European countries or something like that. Therefore, Australians are not used to be told, don't go there, don't do that, do this, by authority, government. They are not used to, and they don't like it. But what I am very grateful is that it seems 70–80% people, even if they don't like it, they understand the importance of responsible actions, and for other people, they are doing, even if they don't like to be told to do so. You new Australians coming from particularly very difficult circumstances, Middle East or some other countries, they were told too many times, don't do that, don't go there, by authorities and governments. And they don't like it. Therefore, they are very suspicious. Especially say, go and get the needles, and they don't like it because they are afraid. Now, we have only about 20% people we have to bring with us. You are the leaders. How are you going to do it?
你帮我翻译。你声音大点儿。我想谈一下新冠问题。
He wanted to talk like a little more about coronavirus before we end today.
新冠问题让全世界呢很紧张，因为我的学生呢，美国、加拿大、澳大利亚，世界很多地方的我的学生，他们都非常紧张。
Coronavirus has led people over the world have really like anxious, have anxiety, and many had many like problems in real life, like for example housing or jobs. Like people are losing jobs because of the virus, and many of his pupils over the world in America and all across Asia have already been experiencing that.
这是一个就像就是抑郁症很重的世界，整个世界就像每个人得了抑郁症一样的这么压力。
He has seen the world change dramatically over the course of the COVID cases as like the world gets spread with coronavirus, and he has noticed that everyone's emotional and everyone's appearance seemed to really be down, like not as cherished as before the virus.
还贷还不起，离婚的，反正什么事都会有，但是我觉得我们一定要有一个好的心态。
He said that despite the current situations and the status quo of the situations everyone is in, like some people led to family issues, led to social factors that led them becoming homeless or all that. But Master Lo Xing believes that everyone should have like a good view and be content that there's people trying to help and there's a society out there for people.
心态呢决定未来的生活。
What you thought and your belief right now creates the opportunity for you to live a better life post-pandemic. Don't let the pandemic get you down.
我简单说一下日本。
He'll talk briefly about Japan.
因为我在日本生活，日本有海啸、地震、暴风雨，各种灾难都有。但日本的心态呢，非常的平和。
Master Lu has lived many years in Japan, and many of the time, especially 1-2 years ago, there's tsunamis and there's earthquake that he has been experiencing. What people has like a good view of it and has and keep on living their life so they don't get affected.
昆士兰州，我来了将近有1年半，因为我下个月我就要回日本了。我感觉这里有几例、几十例，所有人都紧张的不得了。
He noticed that he has came to Australia and lived for around 1.5 years. He's going back to Japan in a month, and he has discovered that even just a few cases in Queensland, everyone has been really frightened about it and really worried and concerned that they may be affected.
在日本，每天1-2千人这种新冠，但是日本人的心态非常的平和。
But in Japan, as there's already geological factors that causes disasters to happen, there's a few thousand cases every day in Japan until a few months ago. And people in Japan has been really calm about it, and it has a really good point of perspective upon this issue, just like another earthquake or tsunami that they would be recovering from.
你们见过天上的鸟被饿死过吗？你们见过饿死的鸟吗？
Have you seen a bird starve to death?
鸟没有，我活到今天没有看过鸟被饿死的，老天只有安排。 每一个人都有一个很好的安排，相信下一个时刻会很好的。
As he was just talking about that, the gods would have like a good. The gods would have like a good. Would have events organized in your life post-event of Corona, just like what he was talking about birds. He has not seen a bird that have starved to death. As the gods, they have created the bird and have created stuff they would feed on, so they would not starve to death. Us humans are the same. Gods have created us for a reason and have organized us for a purpose.
活好每一个当下。
And the last word from him is that live to right now and be content of what you have right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Does that answer your question, or would you like some more? Yes. I think that answers my question. Yeah. Thank you very much. Would you thank again our panellists, Abbott Luzin, Shirley Ann, and Colin. This has been a terrific opportunity. Thank you to the Toowoomba Interfaith Working Group and to Pure Land for having the wisdom to draw together leaders in health and leaders in religious and faith communities to explore how we can make a difference together. Thank you so much. And please take the greetings from our faith and religious communities back to your staff and to your teams. We really appreciate all that you're doing, and that's been expressed in a variety of ways. Thank you very much.